Um, this poem is from Gwendolyn Brooks's collection, The Bean Eaters, from 1960. The poem is about the brutal murder of Emmett Till by his killer Roy Bryant after he whistled at Roy's wife Carolyn during the year of 1955. However, the poem is different than a lot of Gwendolyn Brooks's poems because it's not in an African American perspective. Instead, Brooks demonstrates the development of the Bryant's feelings after the days of the acquittal. I think the title is important in understanding the whole purpose of the poem because it is comparing the two mothers of Carolyn Bryant and Mamie Till, both who were extremely changed by the murder of Emmett Till. And something to keep in mind for context is that Mamie and Emmett Till were both from Chicago, and the funeral was held in Chicago. And Gwendolyn Brooks was also from Chicago, and Mamie Till fought in the civil rights movement after her son's death. I think that this particular set of lines portrays Roy Bryant nervously sitting at his kitchen table, going through the stages of grief for his actions of killing Emmett Till. I think he's reliving the murder through the newspaper in shock of the killing spreading throughout the North. And even though he's still putting on this facade that represents the racism in Mississippi and the racism of the South, there is a new vulnerable side to Roy Bryant that we haven't seen yet that can indicate a sense of remorse. And I will show this through figurative language, the negative diction associated with being distracted, and both end stop lines and inconclusive lines. So, first, I want to talk about the figurative language and the use of metaphors. So in the first line, we see the first metaphor, which is the fine prince. Fine prince is obviously in comparison to Roy Bryant because he was the defender and protector of his wife Carolyn after being whistled at. But it's ironic because here he is sitting, almost doubting his actions of killing Emmett Till, so he's not as strong as the prince he's being represented as. Next is those intruders. Those intruders represents the black African Americans coming to the South and changing the society as most white people knew it at one time. And those intruders, maybe even from the North, that are publishing all these headlines that are trying to change the way society once was with the strong segregation of blacks and whites. And then this next metaphor is super important, I think. And I think that the big fella is the judge in the court case. As we learned in history, the judge, Curtis Swango, was very biased, and he was actually once a member of the Ku Klux Klan, so he was actually racist himself. And I think that he knew that Roy Bryant was going to be acquitted, just like all of Mississippi knew. Next, I want to talk about kennings. The first one I want to talk about is peppered words. This is important because it's describing how he saw the North's headlines in the newspapers. And as we know, pepper is a strong spice used usually to flavor something. And so I think that this is saying that he believes the Northerners were trying to make the papers better by adding all these loaded words that would bring shock to people and feel a sense of sympathy for Emmett Till and for his mother, Mamie Till. Next is half sneers. I think this is important because this is how Roy Bryant presented him to the rest of the courtroom. And it was almost as if he was mocking the trial, and it's his outer facade. And by the word they used after it, by Brooks using the word mastered after that, I think is important because it was almost practiced and not all genuine. It was something that he learned to do. He sneered. Next is snappy-eyed mother. I think this is important in having the image of Mamie Till in the courtroom. Even though she couldn't say anything, she couldn't testify, she could still show her deep sorrow and disgust through her sharp eyes and through her sharp looks that she was giving the killer of her son. And then lastly, I want to talk about just the brown-black kinning. We've seen this through a lot of Gwendolyn Brooks's other poems. She uses the kinning that represents the color of someone's skin, and I think this shows the racism and how even though the whites really didn't know the African Americans, they could just judge them based off the color of their skin. So again, I think that's important to see the racial aspect. Next, I want to talk about language and how it was almost as if he was distracted and he had a lot of negative diction that indicates a sense of remorse. First, I want to talk about this because it's a motif throughout the rest of the poem. Looked at his hands. This shows that I think he was subconsciously doing it. He was distracted. He was almost doubting himself. He was looking at the hands that actually murdered someone, which the motif of hands comes in later, and I think it helps for the style of Gwendolyn Brooks. But next, this next line underneath is mumbled. So it shows that he was not confident in his actions because he didn't know how to address what the North was saying. He wasn't confident in saying that the North were making all these headlines about him and how shocking and how shocked everyone was. Next is time lost. I think the word lost indicates that things will never be recovered for his life. His life has changed forever. And then once again, this unwanted fame. He didn't really want to kill him anymore. He wished he had never did it. He wished he had never done it. And then this last one, bleeding, I think is important in the motif later on in the poem of blood and this imagery because he's reliving the moments and not being able to forget. As structure goes, the contrast between ending stop lines and unfinished lines, I think represents his thought process as he's going through grief and denial. He's trying to say something negative about the mother, but he can't really finish it. And this is shown here with the two dashes. Earlier he was saying time lost, the unwanted fame. He finished that sentence. He knew, he was confident in what he was saying. He knew how he felt. But then as he tries to justify his actions and describe the mother of the boy that he killed, he can't finish his sentence, and it's inconclusive. And then again at the bottom, he's going on about how he knew it was going to happen. It's inevitable. He was going to be acquitted. But then when he's describing what the governors could do and what they should do, he couldn't finish his sentence. So I think this is important, again, to show the theme. This set of lines in the poem by Gwendolyn Brooks is about grief and reveals that a wrongdoer has the ability to feel vulnerable and remorse for his or her actions. However, I think also it shows that sometimes through the wrongdoer's denial, there is also an acceptance of the outcome and a facade, and this acceptance usually comes from the wrongdoer justifying his actions and finding reasons why he did it.